Hey, you guys. So last week, we finished with a question sent to me by Coach. Coach asked me how to address children who constantly interrupt, correct their parents, tell them what the parents need to do, which is becoming, by the way, increasingly common. When I was a kid, you didn't tell parents what to do. I suppose in part because they'd punch you in the face if you did, but it's becoming really common because parents are afraid of their children. They're afraid of losing their children's approval. So what do you do when children are correcting and criticizing, often swearing at their parents, interrupting them? It's got to stop. So I'm just going to briefly summarize what we talked about last week. I'm not going to go over the whole thing. It's got to stop for the benefit of the child because the child is unloving. And that pattern of behavior is going to continue into work. They're going to get fired, relationships, they're going to get divorced or never have one at all. And there has to be lots of loving and teaching consistently. Parents don't do that. They administer loving and teaching like, an occasional garnish. That's not good enough. It has to be all the time. And if that doesn't work, loving and teaching, then it may be appropriate to do consequences. But parents hear consequences and they go straight to the consequences. Maybe because they're more dramatic, maybe because they see results more immediately. Loving and teaching takes time. Don't go to the consequences too soon. So an example of a consequence. You might say to a child, for a couple of days, I'm going to point out to you when you interrupt me or criticize me without a consequence. But after that, you're going to start losing now listen, privileges that come with being in our family because you're refusing to fulfill your responsibilities of being in the family. Privileges and responsibilities go together. And what happens is we allow our children to have all the privileges of being in a home that we've worked for 30, 40, 50 years to provide. We give them the privileges and then no responsibilities to do spit. So no wonder they grow up feeling entitled and irresponsible and unloving because everybody just gives them whatever they want. Be like staying a baby bird forever. No, you have to, get out of the nest and learn some stuff. So if you're not going to fulfill the responsibilities, you're going to lose the privileges. So when a child then corrects the parent, and I don't mean asks a question. You tell a child to do something and they say, well, what about... Fine. I encourage my kids to ask questions. But to correct them or to put the parents down in front of other adults, that's not okay. And then you don't just love and teach. And you don't say the usual thing that most parents do say when children are rude, inconsiderate, thoughtful. You don't say, you can't talk to me like that. Well, clearly they can. They just did. Or go to your room. No, you say, come with me for just a second. And so that you don't unnecessarily embarrass them in front of everybody, unless, of course, it's just their siblings, and then their siblings would actually benefit from the lesson. You explain that the consequence that you talked about before is now going to happen. So you talked before about how they would not have use of their iPad for a day or two or whatever it is. And you say, so the consequence is happening. At which point, of course, in the beginning, kids are going to go, you have to be ready for this. And say, so I can take the iPad away for 2 days or I can take it away for 3. So you actually do have a choice. Which would you prefer? And the more you complain and squawk, and it's exactly what I'm talking about you doing. So you can pay me now, little, or you can pay me now later. That's what consequences are like. You ramp them up the more kids don't pay attention to them. It would be useful if everybody who's raising kids were to go to the blog of April 23 of this year, 2014, and there's a long, unusually long blog all about the necessity of our giving our children a life education and not just a school education. Be worth reading. Coaches tell me that they're often having problems with people understanding when they can offer guidance or correction or suggestions or requests to their partners. And in one of the books, I don't remember which one, I don't remember what's in any of them, but in one of the books, it talks about that we don't offer guidance or correction to our partners unless we can answer 4 questions affirmatively. Yes. So the first one is it any of your business? So you're driving somewhere and your partner takes a road that's going to take you longer to get where you're going. Is it your business? Yeah, because if you're in the car with your partner, then it's going to take you longer to get there because your partner made a choice for you. Sex. Having sex or not having sex. Is that any of your business? Yeah, it is. And so you actually do get to make requests or suggestions. So those are a couple of examples where you can say yes. Is it any of your business? But now let's go to the second question. Does it matter? So with driving, I could sometimes correct Donna and say, it'd be faster for us to go this way, or it'd be faster to be in this lane. And we might save, 15 seconds getting wherever we're going faster. I don't know about you, but I know virtually nobody who manages their time so well that 15 seconds makes a difference. In other words, yeah, it's my business, but no, it really doesn't matter. So as soon as I get to a no, I get to shut up. Now, we've used the example of driving and sex. Does it matter? Yeah, probably does. In a partnership, your partner's about everything. So you do get to make suggestions or requests or whatever about sex because it is your business, and yep, it does matter. Third, can you say it lovingly? This is big because even if it does matter and it is your business, if you say something with a tone, I hear this every day from somebody, really, usually several times a day, when people say, well, I asked my husband or I asked my wife, and I say, yeah, but did you have a tone? They say, well, I don't think so. Were you afraid that they would turn you down? Or were you thinking about the many times they have when it hasn't gone well? Well, yeah, I was thinking about it, but I wasn't using a tone. Yeah, you were using a tone. So we have to be able to say it with no expectations, whether it's asking for sex or driving or whatever it is. Now, the fourth one is the one that coaches are saying that they're having a lot of trouble with, and that is, can your partner hear it lovingly? So, for example, a lady said to me that she considered the 4 questions, and she said to her husband she was expressing a desire for more sex, and so she said, we haven't been having sex much at all lately. In fact, in the last year, we've probably had sex maybe 10 times. And she said, but I said it lovingly. Maybe you did. And when you say to your partner, we haven't been, what your partner really hears is, they haven't been. And there's pretty much no way a partner can hear, you haven't been doing your duty in the last year, and hear it lovingly. Impossible. Your partner's not going to hear it that way. Now, if you're confused about whether it's loving, whether they can hear it in a loving way, watch their face. Watch their face and listen to their tone of voice. If there's a pause in their voice, if I say to Donna, so just a little bit ago when I asked you about whatever, did you feel any criticism? If she goes, well, that means yes, she felt criticized. We have to not be looking for an answer that lets us off the hook. We have to actually be paying attention to our partner's facial expression, body posture. If you're saying something to your partner and you notice that they're leaning farther and farther away from you, honey, that's like a clue, you know. I've sat with many couples here on the couch here in my living room, and I've straight out asked one of them, "So how are you feeling?" "Oh, pretty good." I said, "Well, your partner's sitting up like this and you're sitting in an angle like this, so the odds that you're feeling pretty good are 0. We have to watch for that." And then really kind of basically think before we speak. And I don't mean overanalyze, and I don't mean be afraid, but I talked to a couple just 2 nights ago. They called because they were in the middle of a fight in the car, and they were Skyping me. These technological things just amaze me, that somebody can Skype me with their camera while they're having a fight in the car. I actually had to ask them to pull over because they were fighting while they were driving and Skyping, which I thought was excessively dangerous. And I said, "You have a look of absolute disgust on your face. He disgusts you." And she said, "Well, no." And the whole time she was arguing with me, "No, I'm not disgusted." He was sitting there right next to her in the front seat going like this. That's the look she has. We sometimes have to just stop and listen. Listen to our tone. Listen to how we feel. And if we'll do that honestly, we'll be able to answer the question, can my partner hear this lovingly? If your partner's busy doing something else, watching a football game, it's the 4th quarter, there are 4 seconds left, and the little guy who has the ball in his hand throws the ball in the air to a guy who's running far down the field, that's not the time to bring something up. They're not going to be able to hear it lovingly no matter how you say it. So we just need to practice. If we're honest, dang it, it's this easy. If we're honest about how we're affecting other people, if we're observant about how we're affecting other people, we'll be able to answer that 4th question. Really. But we're in so much denial. I've noticed this. I had 3 conversations today with people who were in denial about how angry and controlling they are. And in each case, with each person of the 3, when I would describe their controlling, they would say, I'm confused. I don't know what you mean by controlling. I've been accused of a lot of things, but being vague is not one of them. And they say, "Well, I just don't understand." And I say, "Yeah, you really do understand. You just don't like the answer." I have never one time told somebody, "That was loving and kind and sweet of you," never once, and had them say, "I'm confused. I don't understand." You see the point? We're confused by the things we don't like. If somebody tells us we're a terrific person, no confusion there. We just lap it up like a cat does milk. We just got to pay more attention to our partners, really. One of the most common causes of conflict in couples is that one partner is a controller and the other is a runner. That really should be kind of obvious, right? Because if one partner is a controller, they're going to look for somebody who's controllable, for somebody who is emotionally less strong. So they'll latch onto somebody who lets them control them, but everybody gets tired of that eventually. And so then eventually the control-E goes, I'm not so sure I like this. So they pull away. They withdraw, run, call it whatever you want to. They withdraw. Well, controllers don't like withdrawing. And so controllers reach out just like my Burmese python used to do if one of its prey managed to wiggle free, and oh man, they get a much bigger hold on their prey, like as in swallow half of them. And then the runner tries to run even more. And this is a cycle that just goes straight down into the toilet. It's such a common pattern that it deserves a few moments of consideration. The controller sinks their claws into the partner, hits the partner with criticism, stabs with comments. And so what the controller does looks worse because it's more visible. You reach out with a meat hook and snare somebody in the neck, that's kind of hard to miss. The runner starves their partner. Now, none of this is intentional. Everybody's doing this just to survive. But the runner runs away and without meaning to almost literally takes the air out of the room with them, at least from the viewpoint of the controller. The runner adds to the emptiness of the controller. See? The controller adds to the fear of the controlee. It's still hurtful when a runner pulls away, but it's not quite as obvious. So, which is worse? They're both hurtful, but it's useful to consider a couple of things. And this pattern is so common, there's pretty much nobody listening who doesn't identify with one of these two roles. No kidding. The controller violates the law of choice. The controller says, you have to do this. And if you violate the law of choice, honey, you're wrong. You're wrong, period. They tell the runner what they have to do. The runner doesn't really tell the controller what they have to do. So in some ways, it's less a violation. Still feels hurtful to the controller, but the runner doesn't tell the controller they have to do anything. The runner simply says, I won't participate. And we always get to make that choice. So if a runner says, I'm leaving, I'm not going to continue this conversation, the controller can still talk. The controller can talk all day long into a microphone, record it, hear their voice played back, call all of their friends, tell everybody that the runner is a terrible, horrible person. But we always get to choose what we do. We have to have the right to run. Sometimes that's all we can do. Controllers don't have the right to control the runner. Now, ideally, what happens is we learn not to control or run. We learn to be loving. Just describing how these two behaviors are different. And usually, the controller has to stop first. Because, emotionally speaking, it's hitting. When I try to control you, when I criticize you, and we control with things like guilt, anger, these are emotional violations. It's hitting. It's not reasonable to say to the runner who's trying to escape this emotional hitting, you need to hold still while your partner hits you. No, that doesn't make much sense. They have to preserve the right to run. So, although both running and controlling are often unloving actions, the controlling has a connotation to it that's more negative, it's more a violation of the law of choice, and usually has to stop first. Doesn't make you a worse person, because we learn controlling and we learn running from the time we're little kids, so it's a function of learning, it's not a function of evil. I talked to a woman, separate subject, on the phone who was feeling unappreciated. And I asked her to describe exactly what event led to this feeling. She said, I put on a nice dress and I was nice to my husband when he walked in from work, but he didn't say anything at all. I feel like he doesn't care about me at all. So I said, why did you put on the nice dress? Why did you say something kind to your husband when he came in the door? She said, to be nice. I said, no, you did it to get attention for yourself. She started to argue, which is common. We tend to defend what we do. No, so I interrupted. I said, you just told me that you didn't feel appreciated. And that's because he didn't pay you for the efforts that you made to earn his attention. You did it all, or at least mostly, for you, as proven by your disappointment. In fact, now by your irritation. It's just a fact. It's not a discussion. She said, but I didn't mean... I interrupted again, because lying and acting like a victim simply isn't productive. Allowing people to keep doing it simply reinforces the pattern. It doesn't work. So I tried something different. I said, "Where's your hand?" "What do you mean?" I said, "Your hand is in a jar, a glass jar, ceramic jar, actually, with a label on it." Oddly, she was willing to participate. She said, "What does the label say?" I said, "The label says cookies." "I don't understand." I said, "You have your hand in the cookie jar, honey. You were manipulating your husband. You were taking affection from him. And you've been caught with your hand in the jar." "Well," I said, "are they your cookies to take? Was it your attention to take?" Well, as you know, is usually preparatory to a defense. I said, "No, they're not. You are stealing attention from him. But then you claim that you're not. You are manipulating your husband for attention, and you don't like it that you've been recognized for stealing or manipulating. Until you see that you try to trade with him and manipulate him, your relationship cannot be rewarding. You can only get imitation love, not the real thing." And we all do this. We just need to see it. And that's one of the functions of wise men and women. We need wise people to catch us with our hand in the cookie jar right while we're denying it, so that we can see it. We need to learn to accept attention and love and never manipulate other people for it, or we lose. And in our defense, we've been taught to do this from the time we were little kids. So we often need the perspective of somebody else who can help us to see that we're doing this. A woman wrote to me. She said, "This morning I saw my husband playing a video game. I hugged him from behind and said, 'I know you enjoy playing Angry Birds. And earlier today, I saw that you were reading a novel for a couple of hours. Have you ever considered why you enjoy doing those things?' He responded, 'It's probably a diversion.' She continued, speaking to him. She's writing this to me, but she said to him, 'That's very honest of you. Do you know what you're trying to distract yourself from?' He said, 'No.' And she wrote to me, 'All the while I was hugging him. I ended the conversation, but I'm not sure I did the right thing.'" Now you can be sure. You were analyzing him. You were being his coach or his therapist. And pretty much everybody hates that. And knowing your husband, he hates it twice as much. And second, you were trying to change his choices. You weren't asking him about Angry Birds because you're doing a consumer study. You weren't doing it so you'd understand him better. You were doing it so that instead of his playing Angry Birds, he'd do something with you. That's what you were doing. And you were doing all this sideways and manipulating, and it doesn't work. Now, I happen to know her husband. He's already, just in the last couple of months, been nicer to you than he's ever been. And you're forgetting that and not trusting that he'll keep learning. And he's going to keep learning at his pace, in his way, not your way. And your analyzing him is just going to drive him further away. And second, you want him to read your mind and come up with things to do with you. And knowing him and knowing most partners who tend to be the withdrawer, that's never going to happen. Him being him and you being you. So you may not think it's fair, but pretty much if you want something to happen between the two of you, you're going to have to come up with the activity and the timing and request it in a loving way and make sure that it happens. But if you do it this way, having him read your mind and analyzing him, this is never going to happen. Way more productive if you simply ask him for what you want. You don't care if he's playing Angry Birds. You got to let that go. You have to say, "Fred, after dinner, at 6:30, I'd like to just walk around the neighborhood or in the woods or the whatever, and I'd like to go with you. Would you be willing to go with me? There. See how absolutely casual it is? And if he says, well, no, I'd rather stay in the house. You say, okay, I'd like to do something with you this evening. Is there something you'd like to do? I can already tell you the answer. He won't know. He'll say, well, I don't know. So you're going to have a plan, honey. Well, then I'd like to play whatever, cribbage with you. That's a really old card game for those of you who have never played the game. Play a game, play cards, watch a movie, hold hands, plan our coming week, read 2 pages out of the Real Love and Marriage book. Pick a thing, honey, but make it light and easy, and pick something that you don't already know he's going to hate. We're going to sit and hold hands in 2 opposite chairs, and we're going to look into each other's eyes and say what we love about the other person. I can tell you he's really going to hate that. So, something casual. But don't make comments about what he's doing. Here's somebody who says, I know a very poor family whose daughter had cancer. This is an unusual question. I'm not really sure I've been asked this before, which is unique all by itself. Whose daughter had cancer and was not going to recover. The mother spent a lot of money, a whole lot, like everything the family had, for medications and doctors, and the father was angry about it because he said that the girl was dying anyway and they were poor. Now, I can just tell you, if I were to bring this up in a room of 100 people and ask them which way they should go, this would polarize the room. There are people who would say, oh, you'd sell everything you had and go bankrupt to preserve 3 more minutes with your child. And those people would say that what he said was cruel. The other half of the room would have a different opinion. So the father was angry that they were poor and spending everything they had on a girl who was going to die anyway. And a few days later, the girl did die. And the father was blaming the mother for wasting so much money. I know, this is the person writing the question, that anger and blaming is always wrong. But what should the mother have done? She wanted to do everything she could in the hope that her girl would live a little longer. If you are sure that someone is dying and you're poor, would you spend money for medications? I can't answer this question for you. I can tell you some things to think about, but only you can make this decision for yourself. Suppose, this may help you, it may not. Suppose I was dying of cancer. We knew I was going to die. The doctor said, you're dead. They're usually a little more tactful than that, but some aren't. You're dead. And you're going to die in a relatively short period of time. If you get treatment, we might be able to prolong your life a month. But we're certainly not going to save your life. And there are cancers like that. And we had very little money, and my treatment would completely empty out everything we had. Now, I couldn't possibly know what I'm going to do in a future event, but, you know, I doubt we'd do that. I doubt we'd spend all the money we had. Why? Now, here's the thought to consider. The primary goal of life isn't to prolong life. It's not. I see debates on television about pulling the plug of somebody who's been in a coma for 15 years, and we just love to be voyeurs and participate in everybody else's drama. And I'm thinking, so we have conversations. There was a lady, marriage, doesn't matter, a lady in the news years and years ago, and they talked about whether her husband was being cruel because he wanted to pull the plug for, oh my gosh, 100 news cycles. And yet, we don't talk about being loving or happy. The primary goal of life isn't to prolong it. The point is to enjoy every moment we have. All over the world, we spend so much time and energy prolonging life. We have all of these scientific advances, while we spend so little energy and so little time and so little discussion discovering what makes life worth living. I was a surgeon. I saved lives and restored function to people who, after I did that, were just as miserable as they were before. So did I do any good? I don't know. Does it do it? In fact, if somebody's miserable and I prolong their life, did I not just prolong their misery? We tend to live in the past and the future, and we miss the joy of the moment. Just this moment. So today I spent, I don't know, several hours, I think, outside picking up sticks, spraying poison ivy, pulling weeds, just hauling stuff, getting dirty and sweaty. And I did it with my sweetie, and I enjoyed every second of it. And we didn't really even quite finish the job, I suppose. We kind of did a little bit on several jobs. Who cares? If I got absolute word right now, you're going to be dead in an hour, I promise you, I'm not going to go, oh, I didn't finish that job outside. No, I'm not going to be thinking about the past or the future, nothing. I'm going to be enjoying now. That's where it all is. We get to the end of our lives and discover that there is no future and the past is gone and we have nothing if we haven't enjoyed what we've got right this minute. So the balance isn't about life. The balance is love. Compute that. Now, back to the mother and father. Separate subject. Suppose that these two are partners. Spending money is a joint effort. It's something that partners do together. So, the father would benefit, he would learn more about love from at least understanding and perhaps even leaning toward his wife's urgent desire to prolong the life of his daughter, even if he doesn't agree with it. He could at least understand it, express his understanding, and at least lean toward her as she expressed it. And when I say lean, I mean more than just physically lean. I mean lean his interest toward her opinion. The mother would benefit from leaning toward the father's need not to be afraid of being bankrupt or without a home or without food. They both need to pay attention to the other. So again, what's the subject? The subject is love. And then they spend what they both agree to. Boy, this just tears families up, so I'm going to explain it really clearly. So, what if one person in a partnership agrees to spend, it doesn't matter what the subject is, on a car or a house or the health care of a child or helping kids who have gone away from home and just want to lie around and do nothing and have the parents support them, because I hear these questions pretty much every day. What if one parent says, well, I think we should spend $7 on whatever, and the other one says, I think we should spend $10. Now, those of you who've been away from school for a while know what Venn diagrams are. They use them in logic and in geometry and so on. The amount that you spend is the amount that you overlap. It's the amount that you both agree to. So if one says 10 and one says 7, then by definition you both agree to 7, don't you? The person who wants 10 agrees to 7, at least 7. They want 3 more, but they agree to 7. So if you're in a partnership and one says 7 and the other says 10, what do you spend? This is really easy. 7. Now, some people would be confused and they'd say, well, it seems then like the person who wants to spend less is in control. Yeah, it could look like that if you're in an unloving relationship, but they're not controlling. They're saying what they'd feel comfortable doing. And if you care about each other, then you come to a conclusion that you both agree on. Always. And until you agree, here's the rest of it. Until you agree, you spend nothing. So what if a kid asks you for $10 and one says, sure, I'll give you 10, the other says 7, and you continue to disagree about it? Then you give the kid 0. See how that works out. It's way more important that two partners agree than that any money is spent on anything. Make sense? It's the love. This whole argument about what do you spend on this, what do you spend on this? Notice the answer is all found in what is the loving thing to do between the two partners. Love's the answer. It's not the details. We often talk about, separate subject, how things go well with real love. And wow, they often do. I get to participate in, hear about, witness miracles pretty much every day. But some people do not respond positively to our efforts to unconditionally love them. And we got to face that. We have a lot to learn from them. Many people just cannot integrate even the concept of love into their world. It's too foreign. I did an intervention with a woman named, we'll call her Susie. And when she went home, she became increasingly angry, resistant, negative, whiny, victim-y, argumentative, blaming, which is how she arrived here. It was becoming impossible to talk to her. She fought and argued and was negative about everything. She didn't listen to anything, even though while she was here, she had felt loved and learned a lot. But the further she went away geographically, the more distant she felt. And the distance just overwhelmed her faith. Some people can't keep integrating the idea of real love and the feeling of real love. So instead of calling me, because she came, she felt happy, she felt loved, she felt wonderful, she left and started becoming argumentative and doubting. And so she lost the feeling, had to blame that on somebody. She wasn't willing to take the responsibility for losing the feeling herself, so she blamed me. I get that. It's really common. So she began to call the wise woman who had been here as an intern during her intervention. So this interaction can be useful for us here, because what I'm going to do is share with you my conversation with a wise person so you can see what that looks like. The wise woman texted me. This is very cool stuff. The wise woman said, Susie told me that she talked to you and that you told her pretty straight about her whining and victimhood. Now keep in mind, I don't talk to people pretty straight until I've spent a lot of time loving them first. And I said, yeah, I really did. Her victimhood is killing her, and nobody has ever helped her see that. The wise woman says she was upset, and in all caps, really upset at you. She was bawling and crying. And I said, yeah, she does that. When you don't tell her what she wants to hear, which is that she's right and everybody else is wrong, she cries or sulks or gets angry. And it's sad, but everybody in her life has just let her do that. So she gets confirmation that she is a victim because they let her do it. Or they leave her, they abandon her completely. The end result is she has nobody who's ever stayed with her. Nobody, ex-husband, parent, not a single person stays in this woman's life because she is so bitter and blaming and angry and victim-y. So she's got two people. She's got me, she's got you, who are willing to tell her the truth. Two people in a lifetime. Pretty rare. The wise woman said. She started in about you, meaning criticizing me, which is not the first time I've heard this, about how you'd hurt her feelings and blah, blah, blah. And I had to tell her, whoa, honey, whoa, Susie, listen. This is the wise woman talking to me. She told me that she was finished with you, that I had grossly offended her and she'd never talk to me again. And I've heard that many times before. People who are victims are deaf, so you say it a little emotionally louder, not actually louder with your voice. They still don't hear. Then they don't hear. Say it a little louder, they still don't hear, and you speak a little bit louder, emotionally speaking, and then they're offended. There's no place where they listen. And of course, then it's all my fault. Or she blames her ex-husband, or she blames her mother, or she blames the store clerk, or she blames her boss, or whoever is interacting with her, like all the people who've abandoned her in her life. The wise woman said, I told her I was going to go eat my dinner, and because Susie had been talking to the wise woman and blaming and angry for quite a while, like an hour. I told her I was going to eat my dinner and I would call her in 10 minutes. And she said, well, then I won't be here when you get back. If you can't interrupt your dinner to talk to me, then you don't care about me either. See what victims do? Victims can turn on the blaming and the venom to such a white-hot heat that it scares everybody, and so they get their way. But then eventually everybody gets tired of this and everybody leaves her. The wise woman continued. I ignored that, and I told her that I would ring in 10 minutes, and I hung up. This woman wants what she wants. She wants what she wants. Listen to the word. Not what she needs. And if you don't give her what she wants, which clearly doesn't help her, she wouldn't be in this condition, then you're the devil. And then she throws you away, or you get tired and you walk away. The wise woman said, I rang back, there was no answer, so I left it in her court to handle. 5 minutes later, she called me, and she was angry, to say the least. She said about me, he called me pathological. I'm done with him. Again, me. How dare he, me? And I said, yeah, to the wise woman. I did. I did say the word pathological. She was getting crazier and crazier by the day. And I finally told her that she was becoming pathologically selfish. To distinguish that from just run-of-the-mill selfish, I took the bigger piece of the pie. She didn't hear a thing I had to say, deaf, until I used the word pathologically. I didn't use it accidentally. I did it to get her attention. And she didn't hear anything before I used it, which proves that she was in the deaf mode. Deaf, 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 then offended. But as soon as I said pathologically, suddenly she listened. She was at least listening, but of course then offended. So again, deaf or offended, no listening. The wise woman said, I stopped her after a while. I got to tell you, I really admire this. Very few wise people have the courage to stop somebody who's doing this, who's being a victim. They just let them keep talking. And these people destroy themselves. This is life or death. Wise woman said, I stopped her after a while because that could have gone on all night. Brilliant. That's exactly why I used the word pathologically, because it not only can go on all night, it can go on all life. I used it to stop the ranting, which is hurting her. The wise woman said, I told her she was wrong. And the reason she was wrong, because she was angry, ranting, blaming, which was killing her. Genius. That's genius wise womanness. She continued. A long story, as you know, but I told her she was pathological. That being an extreme liar, delusional, attacking everybody, blaming everybody, not a drop of gratitude in her entire soul, and she couldn't see that. We were on Skype, the wise woman says, and she looked shocked for a moment when I said all that. Yeah, I'd be shocked too if somebody told me I was an extreme liar, pathological, delusional, attacking, blaming, and no gratitude in me. That would get my attention. Donna says it to me regularly, and it does get my attention. She looked shocked for a moment, the wise woman says, but then she continued her rant. This is serious deafness. And yet, victims blame their everything on you. Blame their being deaf on you, blame their being offended on you, blame everything. They blame everybody but themselves. So again, deaf or offended. She didn't hear you, hence the ranting, until you were straight with her. Used words like delusional, but then she only paused for a moment and moved on to being an absolutely irretrievable victim. And she almost never responds to anything that people say, certainly nothing that I've said to her. And she changes the subject at a moment's notice to whatever will make her feel more victimized. So if I say something about love and how she could feel it, or how I'm loving her in the moment, what does she respond with? Here I am, I'm saying, in this moment, I'm saying to Susie, in this moment, what am I doing? She can't even answer the question. So sometimes I'll say, in this moment, right now, this is all we've got. We haven't got yesterday. We don't have tomorrow. Impossible. In this moment, I'm loving you. Her response? Well, my ex-husband never loved me. Victims can find something to be in pain about all the time. I said one day to this woman, this exact woman, I said, if I said to you, wow, it's really a bright, sunshiny, beautiful day, you would say, yeah, till the sun goes down. And she would. In her defense, she was raised in a truly painful world. That was all done to her. We've all been hurt. We've all been victimized. But now it's our responsibility whether we feel and act like victims. Everybody gets victimized. Every child who isn't loved is victimized, truly victimized. But we're not children anymore. Now we got a choice to make. And if we can't choose not to act like victims, we can at least ask somebody who knows how to help us. See? So sometimes it's pretty hard to get people's attention, like using words like pathologically. But some people, it's like they have one setting. I will be a victim. I will be hurt by you or somebody else, no matter what you say or do. The wise woman went on to describe her conversation with the woman, and she said, I can take Susie to the water, I can hold her head in it, but she is so stubborn, arrogant, and in pain that she won't open her blank mouth, big mouth, and drink. It's like she's determined to die and blame everybody for it. I know this place well. The metaphor that I sometimes use with people is, I will say to them, you are standing in the middle of the desert and you are screaming, I'm starving to death, I'm starving to death. I hand you a plate of food. What do? You throw it on the ground and scream, I'm starving to death, I'm starving to death. I try again, I hand you the food, you throw it on the ground and scream, I'm starving to death. It's a kind of craziness, all coming from pain. I'm defending victims. Their pain is real, but there's a way out. And it starts with trusting, and that's something you can't do for a victim. You can give them a safe place, you can love them, but you can't make people trust you. This just gives you an idea of how difficult it can be to work with victims, which is why most people don't. In fact, many people, when they get to the point of victimhood, that they acquire actual personality disorders, which is what personality disorders are. It's just extreme victimhood, response to pain. Many psychologists refuse to see them. They're impossible to work with. But love works. I've seen it work too many times. Lady in a relationship. She'd read books, she'd been to seminars, she'd gone to groups, Facebook, endless calls, dozens of coaches. And her coach said to me, so I just don't know what to do, because she doesn't listen to anything. I've tried everything. I've worked with this woman for a year. She doesn't listen to anything. No matter what I say, she says everything is terrible. This kind of addresses the last lady we were just talking about. Sometimes the only thing to do is to say goodbye. It has been my experience that as long as you keep talking to somebody who is learning nothing, who keeps being victimized, they believe that they're doing something. They believe that they're doing their work. So now they can say, but I am doing. How many people do I know who have said, I've been doing real love for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, and they're no further along than they were on the first day. So as we keep answering their victim complaints, as we keep explaining things to them, we actually do them a disservice because they feel like they're doing work that they're not doing, and it hurts them. On many occasions now, I've seen people not be motivated to learn until I've said, when you're ready to actually listen, let me know. But we won't be talking again until you are. And of course, at that point, they say, well, I am listening. No, we weren't having a discussion about that. You're not listening. You argue with everything. And when people feel absolutely cut off in their victimhood, some of those people feel sufficiently motivated that they're willing to actually listen. Some don't. But you're not in charge of that. You're also not responsible to keep trying to help somebody who won't listen. I sometimes say to people, when your happiness means more to me than it does to you, something's wrong with this picture. That's okay in the beginning. In the beginning, you don't even know what happiness is. But after months and months of not listening and expecting everybody to save you, it's actually a disservice to keep working with people like that. I had a conversation recently with a man who was talking about faith in love. He said, so the love, once you have faith in it and believe it, comes from within. So does it become self-generated? No, not really. Love comes from other people. Love comes from God, for example, and then you pass it on. Love passes through you. He thought, and he said, this is a powerful feeling. It's a feeling that has changed my life. He understood what I was saying. He said, but I'm confused about something. If this is so powerful, if this is so good, and it's so true, which I believe, he said, why does not everybody believe it? Why hasn't it gone viral, like silly videos of, dogs appearing to talk or babies crying when people sing songs to them? Why hasn't it gone viral? Two things: fear and pain. The effect of fear and pain is overwhelmingly distracting. We remember pain better. Some studies say 7 to 17 times better. Try this in a crowded room. Scream gun or fire and see what people do. Oh, people will respond very quickly. They also tend to respond irrationally because they're afraid. Then scream love. Oh, you might get 2 or 3 people to look at you, but all the conversations will then continue. They might look at you strangely. Love takes real effort. My publisher, Penguin, huge publishing company in the world, and they said, we think this book is just going to go viral and take over the world. And I said, that's really sweet of you to say, but it won't. It will start off slow, and it will slowly build. Now, 12 years later, they say they've never had a book do this before. Books tend to sell much like movie receipts. They sell really big, and then they just drop off. I said, this will sell and then just slowly climb over time. And that's exactly what it's done, because it takes effort, personal effort. It takes honesty. It takes guts. It takes faith. In the same week, if I remember, within a week or two, that Real Love was published, a book was published about women who are telling stories of having had sex with Elvis. You're kidding me. The first printing of that book was something like 20 times more than the printing of Real Love. And in fact, sold more in its first 3 months than Real Love has in 12 years. Really. Not by a lot, but some. We live for entertainment. We live for distraction. We live for fun. We live for anything that would keep us from having to face or deal with our pain. So Real Love takes effort, and it takes effort not just personally, but it takes effort to achieve a critical mass, both generally in people as a whole and in each of us. A critical mass is a term from physics. It's the smallest amount of nuclear material that's needed for a sustained nuclear chain reaction. And the critical mass then depends on the nuclear properties, the number of protons and neutrons in the nucleus, the density of the material, its shape, how enriched it is, how impure, or how pure or impure it is. In other words, 99% plutonium is, you're going to get a critical mass way easier than with 50%. The temperature, a lot of things. It takes a lot of effort to achieve critical mass. In fact, that's the biggest single reason that most nations don't have a nuclear program, is because it takes so much work to get enough nuclear material pure enough to get a critical mass. Refinement, the right conditions, heat, and so on. It takes no effort at all to achieve a non-critical mass or a subcritical mass. In other words, to achieve a reaction that fizzles. Same with love. It takes very little effort at all to fail. It takes very little effort to read a book about women who've had sex with Elvis. That must have been just really fascinating. But we have to actually examine ourselves. We have to change the way we see things, the way we feel, the way we behave before love makes a change. But I've seen so many people achieve a critical mass in their lives that, wow, is it worth it? And when enough of us are doing it, we'll achieve a critical mass first probably in families, then perhaps in entire businesses, or in regions or countries, and then eventually the world. This is possible. Love is the greatest single power in the universe, period. It is. But in the short term, right now, fear is more powerful than love. In the long run, love, no contest, love wins. But walk into a theater and scream gun, and you see the short-term power of fear and pain. So that's why it doesn't go viral as quickly as pictures of laughing babies. But the more we live it, the more it spreads. The more you feel it, the more you'll be able to communicate it to the people around you. And consistently, the happier you will be. We'll see you next week. Nice to be with you.